Either smoke or fog rolls in over Soldier Field.
All right, we may not see the second half of this game, do they?
Cameras all of a sudden have no idea where the people are because the fog is so thick. It's crazy. The announcers are like, I don't even know what's going on down there. I have no idea. I got nothing. Well, that is what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with the fog. And if you've driven through the fog and you know how hard it is and how confusing it can become in the fog, just trying to drive, that's another guide story here in the American Revolution. Hey, welcome to Luso, a show about our great country, a little bit of coffee, and just looking at what God was doing back in 1776, because it's our nation's 250th anniversary right around the corner, So that's why we have this cake here. Beautiful cake. I keep staring at it every episode, and I'm drooling, wishing I could just put my face in it. You know what I'm talking about? With a little bit of ice cream and whipped cream or something. I don't know. But we are not going to cut the cake until we look back at what God was doing. That's what we're doing here on this show. We're just trying to, figure out what was God doing. And actually, it's incredible when you actually see God's hand and miraculous hand in George Washington winning and successfully beating the British so that we have this great, great country still to this day, 250 years later. So we're just taking a look at all that, partly because, like I say on every episode, Hollywood's talking about none of it. They're absolutely doing nothing. So, hey, go check out this book, award-winning book, 1776. You would think I have royalties or something with it, but I don't. So, I'm just saying it's a really good book, and HBO's had the film rights for 20 years, and they're doing nothing with it. Absolutely nothing. And I'm just bringing that up to your attention. But if you would like to get a book and help me out, help a brother out, you know what I'm saying? Help a brother out because I'm just here talking to you for free, for nothing. But if you go buy my book, hey, it does help me out. So, but also you can go and watch the short film on Luso.tv. And Luso is just simply means a person of Portuguese descent. But in my book, I unravel how he is the 1776 badass warrior called Luso. So go check it out. That's my little shameless plug for Luso and a book. But I'm just a student of the American Revolution. I just love to learn about history and really look back in history and see what was God doing. Like that's the lens I like to look at. And especially here in this great country, because we are so blessed. If you live in this great country, you've seen some of the other shows where we've talked about the blessings that we have, the Constitution that's still in place, the longest Constitution in world history ever, and that 180 countries around the world can say that a little bit of resemblance in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a little or a lot, they have some resemblance of the U.S. Constitution in their own Constitution. Now, mind you, there's 195 countries, about, give or take, maybe 200-ish, on the whole planet, and 180 countries. So that's the blessing that our founding fathers did, that I think Hollywood should be talking about, but they're not. So, hey, that's why we're here. I don't know if there's another podcast show or YouTube channel that's actually talking about the God stories from the American Revolution. So that's why we are here. Let's start off with this little analogy. I like analogies. Have you ever driven a car in the midst of the fog and you're trying to see, you're driving and you're like, where in the heck am I going? The fog gets so thick, so dense that you don't even know where the heck you're going. Matter of fact, I like football. That if you watch the show, you listen to what I'm talking about, you hear analogies on football. You ever watch a show, and there's factual stories that watch a football game and the cameras all of a sudden have no idea where the people are because the fog is so thick. It's crazy. You got the cameras, the announcers are like, I don't even know what's going on down there. I have no idea. I got nothing, It's quite funny. It's quite comical. Well, that is what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with the fog. And if you've driven through the fog and you know how hard it is and how confusing it can become in the fog, just trying to drive, that's another guide story here in the American Revolution. And like I've said before, George Washington should have lost the entire war. Like, he lost more battles than he won battles. And it's only a miracle by God that he even won. So And here's another thing that you can say, this is only God. You can't call God up. Like we say that on the show. Like, it's not like you say, dial 1-800 the Lord and be like, Lord, yes, we need some fall right about now. It'd be really good. You can't do that. George Washington's going to do it. You can't do it today. We can't do that. But God controls all these things that we're talking about. That's what's wild. Like, you can only unpack this and see that God was controlling the fog. So here we are, just outside of Philadelphia. If you live in Philly, I love Philly. I've been through Philly many, many times. Love Philly. And city of brotherly love, as we all know. But we're just outside of Philly at the Battle of Germantown. This is 1777. Again, I'm trying to stick with chronological order here with our shows. But here we are at the Battle of Germantown. My ancestor was there, Peter Francisco, who I write about in my novel, Luso. Peter Francisco was there. He actually was wounded pretty severely, and the stories are that he continued on in that battle and was, fought extraordinarily. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fog. So here we are at Germantown, and the fog becomes so dense during the battle that it created confusion on both sides. I mean, both sides. Washington's men, the British, both sides are now firing. It's friendly fire going on. It's an absolute confusion. And again, like I've said before, the little ragtag farmers are going up against the world's strongest army, the British and the Hessians, and they should be destroyed. But because of the fog that settles in and creates chaos on both sides, and again, the fog is something the only guy can do, they actually are able to escape to go into battle another day. And here in the Battle of Germantown, what we see is the Continental Army does lose. We know that. That's history. But they were able to escape and get away and keep from being just destroyed and wiped off the map. And that's, of course, what the British were trying to do. They're just trying to get rid of Washington and his men and get them to go back to their farm. Like, go back to your farm. Stop fighting. Just cut it out, Quit the rebellion and all. That's really what the British were here to do. But George Washington just keeps showing up and keeps fighting. And he's got this ragtag army. And here in the Battle of Germantown, where they should have just been taken out, the fog comes in, settles in, creates chaos. And later, George Washington's men go, look at what God did. He, in his sovereignty, preserves us and allows us to come back and fight. And if you listen to the show yesterday, you hear the Battle of Saratoga is shortly thereafter. And all of this is in the setting of we win the Battle of Saratoga, and the French take notice of what's going on all at this time period, the fall of 1777. And as they're like just sitting there thinking about it, like, maybe we should get involved. Maybe we don't like the British. Maybe we should send some troops. Maybe we should send some money. And that's what happens here with the Battle of Germantown and in Saratoga that we talked about yesterday with the fog, the mud. The mud was yesterday. The fog was today. And you see God's hand all over it. Now, why does any of this matter? Why? Why does it matter that we look back at history and see what God was doing? Ronald Reagan, one of the most famous presidents of the United States back in the 80s. I was a kid. I was young. But he made a really, really famous quote. And he said, freedom is only but one generation away of being extinct. That is critical. Think about that. Freedom is only but one generation away of being extinct. Man, if you and I don't take notice of what God was doing, I don't know what the next generation is going to look like for our kids, for my grandkids. God was up to something big, and God is still up to something big. And we need to teach these stories to the next generation. So tune in tomorrow, and we'll be talking about one more God story from 1776. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Hit subscribe below. But more than that, click the link below, luso.tv. Watch our short film. That's how you can really help us. Together, you and I, we can educate 83% of Americans that don't understand why we fought the American Revolution. But I need your help. We need your help. So share it with your friends. Pay it forward. Send it to 1,000 of your friends. Okay, maybe 100, 10 of your friends. Pay it forward. Click the link, luso.tv.